On behalf of the Governing Board, I want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. Members of the public are attending both in person and remotely through YouTube Live. In a few minutes, I'm going to read the rules of order for comment at Governing Board meetings, and if you wish to make a comment remotely, you should have signed up using the Google form that's available under the YouTube Live description, which has been open for quite some time now. If you don't see the link to the Google form, you can refresh the YouTube live stream. Attending in person, you'll have wanted to fill out one of these in order for us to proceed with public comment when it is time. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you all to stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I am going to go ahead and read those rules of order. The Governing Board welcomes public comment at its meetings by providing 2 opportunities for the public to address the board. If your topic of interest is not on the agenda, you may address the board during the public comment time slot near the beginning of the meeting, or if the topic is on the agenda, you may speak just prior to the discussion of that agenda topic. In the event there is a public hearing, the opportunity to speak will be reopened. If you're joining remotely and wish to make a public comment, you should have already submitted the Google form provided with the YouTube link. For those attending in person, please hand us your purple sheet, which I have 2 of for this evening, and you would hand that in to our board secretary. The information requested on the form is required for the meeting minutes. Speakers will be called on when it's their turn to address the board. For those attending remotely, you may choose to enable your camera. As a reminder to remote attendees who wish to speak, please unmute your microphone when called upon. Each speaker has 3 minutes to address the board. The sound of a buzzer indicates the end of your minutes. In the event of a large number of speakers, the board may need to limit that time so they can conduct the business on the agenda. By law, the board cannot discuss, consider, or vote on topics that are not on the agenda. This assures the community they are aware of the topics that will be discussed. If you wish to discuss a topic through written communication, board members' contact information can be found on the district's website. We appreciate the community's attendance and comments at this meeting, and thank you for coming. Okay. We're going to go next to item 1.4, which is our outstanding achievements. Dr. Kamerzon.
Thank you. 45 students are recognized in this month's Outstanding Achievement for their performance in basketball, Science Olympiad, and robotics. And as you know, all will be named in tomorrow's board or the summary of this meeting. The Esperero boys' 8th grade basketball team are the Northwest League champions. They capped off a 13-1 record by avenging their only loss of the season to Wilson K-8. In the championship game, we were down by 5 in overtime with 30 seconds remaining. The team found a way to claw back, hitting a 3-point shot with less than 10 seconds remaining to win the game.
Good job, boys.
Orange Grove Middle School Adams scored first place overall at the Science Olympiad competition hosted at Estrella Mountain on December 12th. The Adams will be split into 2 teams next quarter, so they will be the Adams and the Isotopes for their next competition this month.
Love it.
And finally, our robotics team, the First Tech Challenge Arizona Diamondback Tucson qualifier was held on December 16, and our Pioneer team earned 2 awards. They took home 2nd place in the Inspire Award, which is the tournament's top award, and they won 1st place in the Motivate Award. And as the tournament's 2nd place finisher, they were one of the 4 teams that will now advance to the state competitions.
That's fantastic. Nice way to start out the year.
Yeah, fun.
I have to say, when I was reading your synopsis of the basketball game, it sounded like we were talking about an NBA, like, I don't know. It's pretty cool.
It's actually Julie Freiberg's language.
Oh, nice job, Julie. And then we go on to split the atom at Orange Grove Elementary. That's great.
So she has a future in play-by-play, I think.
That's a lot of ask for a middle school. We don't score a lot.
That's amazing. I
Yes.
mean, it's really amazing.
Crazy.
Good job, boys basketball. All right. We'll go ahead and move on to our public comment section, and I have 2 purple forms. I have nothing showing online at this point. I'll keep watching that, but we'll go ahead and take the purple forms in the order we received, and this will bring up Mr. Dan Grossenbach.
Good evening. After a long and mysterious process, a textbook review team identified, reviewed, and ultimately selected their recommended textbooks for you to vote on tonight. State law requires all textbook meetings to be open to the public, not just the board meeting where you vote at the very end of the 60-day review process, but at every prior team's meeting with agendas and minutes. You didn't do this, and this isn't the first time. Here's a list of textbooks that this board voted just in April. First on the list is Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, required for every 9th grader, including my son next year. The book teaches it's okay to steal something if you identify as poor, black, and you really want it. There's more. On page 198, Noah addresses a teacher or an administrator at an all-Jewish school and says, Jews in South Africa are just white people. Fuck you, lady. Fuck your program. Fuck your school. Fuck your whole program. Hitler had shut shit down, and those white people did not know what hit them. The central message of another book you approved that same day, The Hate You Give, by Angie Thomas, teaches students to say, fuck the police, page 46, because all cops are racist murderers. You have rules of decorum here, so unless we're directly quoting your agenda material, we can't use language like that here. I can't say with my own words the very same words you require our freshmen to read. Things like, fuck you, lady, fuck your program, fuck your school would be inappropriate. But why? So we might be wondering, where did these resources come from? What's the criteria to select them? Who's on the review team? We can't know because the process is hidden. That's why in 2017, the legislature outlawed what the Arizona Supreme Court calls secret textbook meetings. In a few minutes, you're about to vote on another set of resources brought to you from another anonymous team. Even if these resources were free from controversy, which they're not, and even if it was legal for you to hide the process, which it's not, secret meetings give the perception at least that you're hiding something. Please table tonight's vote until the entire process can be done openly and legally. Thank you.
Okay, we have our next speaker is Mr. Bart Pemberton.
Thank you. I have a question or point of order. Since the topic I want to talk about was some of the resources that are up for a vote, would I be able to ask questions about it at the time, just before the vote, or is that out of order? I just don't know.
A board meeting is not necessarily is not a situation where audience members question board members. If you want to ask your questions in your public comment, Bart, we can try to address them. We can actually address your questions when we have conversation, but it's not a conversation back and forth.
Oh, okay, understood.
That
So
help?
yes, and so is it okay to ask the question now, or would you rather me ask it just before
Your
you?
druthers.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to know if and when there were any meetings available to the public when these resources were put together. Both the ones that were submitted electronically to Ms. Castro and everything else. Like, were there meetings for those available to the public, and were there any minutes? I don't know, and I just haven't received an answer yet. So that's what I'd like to know. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And I am still not seeing anything online. These are our only 2 public comment forms. So I will go ahead and close public comment at this point and move on to our consent agenda. And given the public comment, I'm going to go ahead and pull the 3.9 so we can try to address that question. But does anyone need anything else pulled from the consent agenda this evening? No?
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 3.1, the governing board December 12th, 2023, regular meeting minutes as presented. 3.2, the governing board December 12th, 2023, executive session meeting minutes, confidential, as presented. 3.3, the expense voucher memorandum as presented. 3.4, the field trip request memorandum as presented. 3.5, the fundraising request memorandum as presented. 3.6, the personnel memorandum as presented. 3.7, the acceptance with gratitude of the gifts and donations memorandum as presented. 3.8, the third quarter tax eligible fees as presented.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further commentary on any of the other consent agenda items, Amy?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, we do have a motion and a second, and no further discussion. All those in favor of those consent agenda items, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Mary, can I just ask that you give us a quick overview of this process?
Well, first of all, we don't have textbook committees.
Okay.
And you know that our curriculum design work happens over a year or two, depending on the content area that's being reviewed. And the professionals who do that work are teachers in our district. There is a statute in Arizona that's specific to textbook committee meetings being public, but it's relevant only to high school, not to K-12. And again, we don't have textbook committees. Ultimately, at the end of the process for curriculum review, these teachers who've been working on the standards make a decision about the kinds of resources they think they want to potentially use to teach to those standards. So no, there are no meetings in public, and we're not going to disclose those teacher names who might have been involved in the design of the curriculum.
Thank you.
May I make a motion?
You'd like?
I move the governing board approve the K-12 core and supplemental resources as presented and the removal of the listed resources as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item 4. This is preliminary, item 4.1 actually, preliminary approval of the 2025-2026 school year calendar. This is our second reading. And again, a preliminary approval of this calendar, even though it is a second reading. And this is an action item for this evening. Dr. Denise Bartlett, Associate Superintendent.
Thank you. It's hard to believe that we are talking about 25, 26 when
Really
we just
is.
started 24, but we are. And again, we're asking for preliminary approval. It will come back to you again next year for final approval. But this is the calendar. There were no changes from the first reading. We have patterned this calendar over after the 24-25 calendar, and it represents the best balance of calendar preferences that we've looked at. These preferences include new teachers beginning on July 23rd and all staff returning on July 29th. The first day of school would be Monday, August 4th. Elementary early release and middle school late start is observed during the first week of school. High school begins at 8:35 and observes regular day rotating schedule. The last day of school would be on May 20th, and it's a half day for students, but a full day for staff. Excuse me. Fall break is October 6th through 10th, and it's a full week. Parent-teacher conferences are during the midweek of October 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, with Monday and Friday being full days of school on either end. Pre-K parent-teacher conferences are by appointment only from September 22nd to October 3rd, and then again on April 20th through May 1st. Veterans Day is on a Tuesday, and it will be a school holiday. And then the short week schedule is observed at the high school during the week of Thanksgiving and the first week of the first semester exams. Winter break is 3 weekends. We have our semesters divided evenly with 90-90. And And the last contract day for teachers is Thursday, May 21st, which is a full day for teachers, half day for students.
Seems like there's a lot fewer short weeks than there used to be, like years ago.
We've tried to eliminate that.
Yeah, that, it was
Well, they're
very
confusing.
confusing.
They're very confusing for people.
I think that's good.
I finally gave up trying to understand the high school
Okay.
schedules and just said,
Oh.
kid, you need to know,
Yeah, of
like, when you
course.
need to be in school and go.
And that was it.
Yikes.
Happens to the best.
Can I just ask a quick question about exam week at the high school? So in December and then again in May. So it's that last week of the semester, and do kids have exams all the way through to Friday?
Yes.
Yes.
They do?
They do, yes, at different times during the day. So there's some half days
Yeah.
that are, but yes, kids have exams all week.
And teachers have to have grades in on that last day of the semester, right? Or do they have time after
Have
that to
time
do it?
after, because the grades are available, like, for this next semester on January 12th.
So they have time to get them in
So,
after the
yes,
end of
they-
that finals
yes.
week?
Most of them try to
Friday.
stay
Okay,
and get them done, but.
Sure.
okay.
What's that? You know,
Just curious. Great.
Except for at the seniors graduating. That's why they take
Right,
their
they're
exams
the week before.
early. So
Yeah,
that
they're
they-
the week before.
Yeah.
Now that I knew. Okay. Other questions on this preliminary approval of the 2025-26 calendar? And again, this goes out there so that families can plan ahead for a couple of
Yes.
years. So we don't necessarily want to make changes when this comes back up a year from now.
Right.
So even though it's preliminary, we kind of like it to be as close to final as possible.
Barring unforeseen circumstances.
Barring unforeseen circumstances, yes. Anything?
I move the governing board preliminarily approve the 2025-2026 school year calendar as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
So did we really preliminarily approve? Or did
Yes.
we approve the preliminary calendar?
We
I think
approved
we
the preliminary.
preliminarily approved.
I thought we
We
approved the.
wholeheartedly approved. We fully approved
Now you're just making me nuts.
of the preliminary calendar.
Good job, Carol.
Who wrote that?
Gotcha. Okay, let's move on to item 5, which is, or item 5.1 actually. Consideration of revisions to high school courses and programs for 2024-2025. This is a first reading, and we'll turn it over to Cheryl Castro, our Executive Director of Curriculum and Assessment.
Thank you. Well, thanks once again to Mary Jo Connery. Over the last 2 years, when you received this particular memo, you'll probably remember that it was lengthy because it included all of the social studies changes, all of the ELA changes. Thanks to all of the work that she did there so carefully, tonight we have one change for you to consider.
I know,
And
I was
that one
kinda
is-
surprised.
I know you thought I forgot a page or two on this, didn't you? So the sole revision is in the science program. We propose that AP Environmental Science, the prerequisite of a B in honors chemistry or an A in chemistry be removed. And this change will allow students in grade 10 to take AP Environmental Science and chemistry concurrently. This change was supported by the science team, by the high school administration, and also by the high school counseling team because they want to open up options for sophomores to take AP classes when possible. It's a pretty simple change.
Go.
Cheryl, this is great, fully support it. My only question is there an accommodation, I guess is the word, for a teacher recommendation? Should a student not have that be in honors biology or an A in biology, for a teacher recommendation then to take the place of that? So I can see, for example, something goes on in a student's life and instead of getting that required B or A, they're, down to a B minus or a B plus or what have you, but yet they're a high performing student and the teacher feels they would do well in that AP class. Is there that opportunity for a teacher's recommendation then to get that child into the class?
Well, a B minus or a B plus would count as a B.
I mean, for the biology, so if they're in biology,
Right. Oh, if they're in
right, where
bio.
it's an A is required.
Right now, the requirement is for the ones that are listed there and teacher recommendation.
So my question is though, is there an allowance for if the student is in biology and has like a B plus, right? Is there an allowance for a teacher recommendation to sort of like override, for lack of a better word, that grade?
That was not presented to me in this information. I can only speak from one of my experiences at the high school.
Yeah.
Whenever we had students who were in that situation, we allowed students to do things or to maybe remove grades to replace things in the classroom. So that B plus in biology might turn into an A, but the A had to be on the report card. So we didn't just grant an A. During my time there, it might have changed.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
not that we should just grant an A. I don't mean that at all. I meant more that,
Yeah.
would we say, yeah, they can go into that
So I
AP
guess to
class?
answer your question, I know from the teams that I've worked at the high school that they take the whole kid into consideration. And we all know our children. I mean, I know my kids in my classroom very well, our teachers at the high school, they know their kids, they know the situations. And so if a student has some sort of difficult situation in their life that prevents them from performing at the level they need to perform at, some accommodations are made so that that student can show what they can really do in the class. So I'm thinking in particular of I was speaking with one of the math teachers several weeks ago where a student's dog died. Simple thing, but a very traumatic thing,
Yes.
and he failed a test. Well, that teacher is not going to keep that failed grade in the grade book because she knows that that child could perform better, but was just under an undue amount of stress. So what I'm trying to say is that teachers along the way do everything they possibly can to make sure that the students' performance is reflected accurately in the grades that they're earning.
Right, thank you.
If I may follow up on that, so if I'm hearing you correctly, then when, for any of these AP classes or other classes where there are prerequisites, it sounds like there's although a prerequisite is listed as being a criterion, there are, it is more of a holistic approach or a more flexible approach from
I don't wanna-
not just this, but for in any.
I don't want to give the impression that what's written here is what's required. A student has to demonstrate proficiency at the levels that are written in the course handbook. What I'm trying to say is that when students are experiencing difficulty, before it even becomes an issue of the prerequisite, students are handling that beforehand. So right now, the requirement of a B in honors bio or an A in bio and teacher rec has to stand.
Okay. I appreciate your response, so I'm satisfied with that. And I mean, certainly from a personal perspective, that's been our personal experience, but I think it's important. It's helpful to have the conversation, so thank you.
Yeah, over the years, I started teaching a long time ago, and I've noticed that we used to just let grades stand. Whatever you earned was it. That's not the way we work anymore.
It hasn't been that
Right
way for a long
now,
time.
it hasn't been that way for a very long time, and it's all about a grade as a moment in time.
Yeah.
And that moment can be affected by so many things that we take that into consideration as our students are moving through their career here in CFSD.
Thank you.
Do we know why it was ever a prerequisite for the chemistry, a chemistry class before going into
I asked
environmental? Was
that.
it just something handed down from the AP people, or?
Yeah, I asked that, and they said that their team's perception, their mindset had been that it had to be this way. Until one day when the environmental teacher said, well, in my class, they really don't need to have a full year of chemistry in order to be successful because it's an interdisciplinary class that has all of the things that we've listed here, geology, biology, chemistry, environmental science, geography. And so they started to think about it logically, and they said, well, we really don't need that prerequisite then, so that's why they asked to remove it. They are discussing a couple other courses that are similar, which may come to you next year.
Well, it sounds like it was a very thoughtful decision.
They're trying to do, one way that Terry Fortunato explained it to me is they're trying to remove barriers to students who want opportunities with the higher level classes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see this again in a couple of weeks for a second reading. And we will then move on to Section 6, our discussion and reports. 6.1 is the CFSD assessment program and the Arizona A through F accountability system. And we're going to turn it right back over to you, Cheryl.
Okie dokie. So, thank you, Eileen, for finding a couple errors, even though we had several people
You know,
proofreading
I never
this.
assume they're errors because sometimes I'm just not
Oh,
looking at stuff right.
That second one you found, that was a big error. I don't know how that one got past us. So I will make the corrections to those and get those back to you if anyone else. And I found a couple more on my own that were
It's a
smaller.
pretty dense report.
It's a lot. It's
probably
a lot, but
easy to miss stuff.
we're going to ask you to proofread it next. We'll contract you as our proofreader next time around. But so I will get those errors corrected in the next one, and I'll list what they were so you'll know what was changed in the report. So, once again, we can't go anywhere without mentioning Mary Jo again. So, I just want to acknowledge my gratitude for the models that Mary Jo left for me. You probably saw her in this report because I shamelessly lifted exactly what she did because it's been working. The format that she has been working. It seems logical. So, a thank you to Mary Jo for providing me with that model. So this summary report references all of the spring 2023 assessment data that we use to analyze student achievement and results in CFSD, and you have the results for AASA, ELA, and math, grades 3 through 8. We have 2 years of state testing data for AZ-Sci in grades 5, 8, and 11, ACT Aspire in grade 9, ACT grade 11. We have 4 years of career and college and career readiness assessment data for grades 9, which we administer in the fall, and grade 11 in the spring. And in the fall, 2023 data for the kindergarten entry assessment. And then our Arizona's A to F accountability system is the final portion of this report. So what I'll try to do is to let you know where I am so you can find it in your board report and follow along. I am at the very beginning of the AASA, ELA, and math report where we talk about the federal test participation requirement, the participation rate requirement of 95%. And thanks again to our efforts of principals, staff, and families. Our students in CFSD participated in the state achievement testing data at a rate of 98.15 to 100%. And so we're doing really well of getting all of the kids tested. The data that you see is listed for AASA performance levels. There are 4 levels. The first one is minimally proficient. The second is partially. The third is proficient, and the fourth is highly proficient. And all of the data that you see for passing rates, of course, includes just the level 3 and 4, proficient and highly proficient. Students who are at the 1 and 2 levels are ones who are likely to need support to be ready for the next grade level or course, while students who test into level 3 or 4 are likely to be ready for the next grade level or course. You'll see that the data is disaggregated because ESEA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, requires that we disaggregate it by 5 subgroups. You're used to seeing race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, disability, and data for English learners. ESSA also added 3 additional subgroups that are not used for accountability purposes regarding homeless status, students with parents in the military, and students in foster care. That demographic breakdown is displayed on page 5 of the report. So on page 6 and 7, we have the ELA and the math data for all tests that were given. So this is, and then later we'll go into the grade level. I'm just going to give you some highlights. The percent passing for ELA for all students in ELA is 70%, which reflects a 3% increase as compared to 2022 and a 7% increase as compared to 2021. All subgroups, with the exception of 2 or more races and limited English proficient, show an increase in percent passing as compared to 2022. And there's a decrease of 2% and 6% respectively for students in the 2 or more races and limited English proficient subgroups. There's an 18% difference in the percent passing for ELA for CFSD students who are full academic year students and non-FAE students. That's 69% and 51% respectively. And CFSD passing rates for ELA exceed statewide and county results by 30% and 31% respectively. As we move into the math data, table 4 on page 7, shows that the passing rate for all students in math in both 2022 and 2023 is 58%, a 3% increase as compared to 2021. And from 2022 to 2023, there's a 2% to 10% decrease in math proficiency across all subgroups, with the exception of the following. Military shows an increase in percent passing of 7%. Both the male and white subgroups show increases of 1%, and the percent passing for 2 or more races is 69% for both 2022 and 2023. The most significant decrease in percent passing is the subgroup limited English proficient, which goes from 30% in 2022 to 20% in 2023. There's a 17% difference in the percent passing for math for students who are FAE and non-FAE, 59% and 42% respectively, and the CFSD percent passing for math exceeds the state and county proficiency rates by 24% and 26% respectively. That trend continues throughout the rest of the AASA data, so I'm not going to repeat it again. But in general, our FAE students do better than the non-FAE students for every test that I have listed here. And the same goes for exceeding the state and the county proficiency rates, where we exceed those in all of this testing data for AASA, with one exception. For grade 3 math, the percent for passing FAE and non-FAE students is exactly the same. Other than that, it exceeds. So kids do better when they stay with us, when they're with us for a while. So I'm going to move into the grade level data, but I'm not going to give you, you have it right there, so I'm not going to reread it for you. I'm just going to pull out some highlights for each of the grade levels. This is on pages 8 through 12, so I'm on table 5. The passing rate for all students, English language arts for grades 3, 4, 5 is 68%, 75%, and 71% respectively, while the percent passing in grades 3 and 5 for ELA show an increase of 2 and 4% respectively. The percent passing in grade 4 reflects a decrease of 4% as compared to 2022. In 2023, the limited English proficient subgroup demonstrates the lowest passing rate across grades 3, 4, and 5, 9%, 29%, and 7% respectively. As we move down to table 6, we see students in grades 6 through 8 in ELA show an increase in percent passing for all students from 2021 to 2023. From 2022 to 2023, 12 of 14 subgroups in grades 6 and 7 show increases in the passing rate for students scoring at the proficient and highly proficient English language arts standards. This excludes some subgroups where the data is the same across years, or in grades 6, 7, 8, the 2 or more races subgroups shows a decrease of 11%, 2%, and 11% respectively. Moving down to table 7. The percent passing for all students in math in grades 3, 4, and 5 is 71%, 59%, and 59% respectively, while the percent passing in grade 3 shows an increase of 8%. The passing rate in grades 4 and 5 reflect a decrease of 9% and 6% respectively as compared to 2022. In grades 3, 4, and 5, the students with disabilities subgroup has the lowest passing rates at 29%, 18%, and 16% respectively. The percent passing for the students with disabilities subgroup shows a decrease in grades 3, that's -3, and then grade 4, -8%, and grade 5, -9% as compared to 2022. Table 8 shows us the passing rates for subgroups for all students in grades 6 through 8 in math. The percentage for all students in 6, 7, and 8 scoring at proficient and highly proficient is 58%, 58%, and 48% respectively. While there was an increase in the percent passing for all students in grade 7 from 2022 to 2023, that was plus 13% for that grade level. The percent passing for grades 6 and 8 shows a decrease of 1% and 2% respectively. A comparison of the 2022 and 2023 data reveals an increasing trend for all subgroups in grade 7 and a decreasing trend for most subgroups in grade 8. We're going to move on to AZ Sci unless you have questions about AASA. We can come back if you think of one.
So many questions.
I know, it's a lot of data. It's a lot of
Gina,
data.
do you want to ask questions before she moves on to the next section? Okay.
All right, so Arizona Science Assessment is administered to students in grades 5, 8, and 11. This assessment is aligned to Arizona science standards adopted in 2018, and the test items were developed using the 3 dimensions of science that you've heard about before when Mary Jo's brought the science curriculum to you. Those 3 dimensions are science and engineering practices, the cross-cutting concepts, and the disciplinary core ideas. I always remember those as what students do to make sense of the phenomena, how students think about the phenomena, what they use in order, they talk about cause and effect, energy and matter, stability and change, it's how they think about it. And then disciplinary core ideas is what students know about the academic content in the areas of life science, earth, space and science, and physical science. Table 9 shows us the passing rate for AZ Sci for all students. It shows in 2023 that it's 57%, which reflects an increase of 7% as compared to 2022, and is more than double the 2023 passing rate statewide. 4 subgroups show a decrease in percent proficient from 2022 to 2023. That's the military with a -2%, income eligible 1 and 2, -5%, Asian, -3%, and Black or African American with -10%. Once again, the limited English proficiency subgroup has the lowest passing rate of other groups. 16% of this subgroup are demonstrating proficient performance in the science standards. In Table 10, we have the AZ Sci passing scores for grades 5, 8, and 11 at 75%, 52%, and 45% respectively. There is an increase in the passing rate from 2022 to 2023 for all students in grades 5 and 8. That's +25 and +4 respectively. In the same time frame, there's a 2% decrease in the performance for grade 11. In the 2023, the highest performing subgroups in each grade level are 2 or more races and male in grade 5. Grade 8, white and 2 or more races, and grade 11, 2 or more races and Black or African American. The lowest performing subgroups in 2023 by grade level are grade 5, limited English proficient, and students with disabilities, and grade 8 and 11 have the same lowest performing subgroups with students with disabilities and income eligibility 1 and 2. For the next, any questions about AZ Sci?
Yes, we'll hold all our questions till the
Okie
end. then.
dokie.
Wait, actually, I do have a question. Now that my mouth is full. So just to clarify, the group of students with disabilities, is that any student with an IEP? Does that also, or does that include, like,
Any student with an IEP or significant cognitive impairment, yeah.
it could be physical disability? it
Yeah,
could be-
any student who receives special services, any student who,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
All right, for this next section, ACT Aspire, I wanted to thank Justin Robinson, the CFHS Testing and Educational Technology Coordinator. He really helped a lot to gather this data, and we sat together and interpreted some of it together. Justin is a real asset to our district. So the ACT Aspire data was first administered to the freshmen in spring of 2022 to determine what students have learned in the areas of English, reading, math, science, and writing, and it's aligned to the ACT College Readiness benchmarks. ACT Aspire scores predict how well a student will perform when they take the ACT in grade 11, so it's an indicator of that. It is not used for accountability purposes, but it does count for bonus points for participation in a school's letter grade calculation. So Table 12 displays the ACT Aspire results for the tested students at grade 9. When comparing the high school scores in the 4 subject areas of English, reading, math, and science, the average scores for 2022 and 2023 are above the national average. Reading is the lowest in 2023, while the highest is English. And using the ACT readiness benchmarks in Table 11 and the 2023 ACT Aspire results, CFSD 9th grade students are exceeding in English, ready in reading, and close in math and science. Table 15 shows the summative data by demographic for ACT Aspire. For all subjects, the percentage of students who are exceeding in ready is higher than Arizona and the nation. In 22 to 23, CFSD students show improvement in English, a decrease in science by -5, and math, -8%. And the percentage for students who are exceeding in ready and reading remains the same in 2023 as it was in 2022, 63%. In grade 11, students take the ACT. 2021-22 was a school year that we first administered the ACT. It's a national college entrance exam with 5 subject area tests: math, science, English, reading, and writing. And the ACT is administered to juniors and is included in the Arizona accountability system. The percentage of CFSD students who are on target for college readiness in English, math, reading, science, and STEM exceeds state and national performance data in both 2022 and 2023. And in 2023, a higher number of CFSD students met the benchmark in English and reading. That's 71% and 55% respectively, as compared to math and science, 39% and 45% respectively. This particular trend is mirrored in the national and the state data. 23% of students met the benchmark in STEM STUBS test in 2023. That's an increase of 2% as compared to 2022. And 31% of students met the benchmark in all 4 subject area subtests. The CCRA Plus, CFSD has been, this is on page 23 of the report. It's an external assessment that we use to measure 9th and 11th grade students' higher order thinking and written communication skills. These are crucial skill sets that are necessary for college, career, and life beyond school. The table 23 displays mastery levels for freshmen and juniors in the 2022 and 2023 school year. 42% of CFSD freshmen are scoring at proficient and above, while 56% of juniors are scoring in the same range.
Where are you again? What table is
Table 23.
Table 23.
It displays mastery levels for freshmen and juniors in 2022-2023 school year.
Thank you.
Table 20, boy, this is the time of day my voice starts giving out.
You need some water? We have.
I have it, so maybe we just start with a little sign language and somebody can interpret for me. Here we go. So table 24 and 25 show the mean sub-scores for CFSD freshmen and juniors in the selected response question. This was interesting to me. The students seemed to have trouble they did well with the reading and writing, but when it came to selected response, I'm thinking of my own experiences in high school where you have to choose a response and you talk yourself out of B over C. That's where they showed a bit of a difference in their data. And so the overall mean scores are higher than all schools for both freshmen and juniors. From 2021 to 2022 and 2022 to 2023, the overall mean score for SRQ, those are the selected response questions, decreased by 7 for CFSD freshmen and juniors, by 32 for juniors. I thought that was interesting. I'm on page 27. We've arrived at my favorite assessment of the year. Seriously, this is my favorite assessment, the kindergarten entry assessment, the unnecessary assessment, but it's still fun to watch. So this is a required assessment for all kindergartners within the first 45 days, calendar days of each school year. Teachers collect and record data on 5 required dimensions: social emotional development, physical, language and literacy, cognitive or approaches to learning, and mathematics. In fall of 2023, 100% of CFSD kindergartners demonstrate kindergarten readiness in each of the required dimensions and objectives.
There you go.
I'm going to pause for a little shout out to our kindergartners.
Way to go, Fliplets.
100% kindergarten ready. Now we're moving on to another area, the last area, Arizona's A to F accountability system. If you have questions about this part, I am not as well versed in this yet. I don't have everything memorized like Mary Jo did, so I will write your questions down and get back to you if I don't know the answers. State law requires the A to F letter grade system, as you know, which is based on a range of quantitative measures, and those are listed in the report. The letter grade components and the points for each school start on page 38, if that might make more sense to you, because that's where all of the data is shown by school. It's a little bit easier to look at than looking at the narrative. The big news here is all 7 CFSD schools earned a letter grade of A, which is described as distinguished performance on the statewide assessment, significant student growth, high 4-year graduation rates, students on track to proficiency, overall performance is significantly higher than the statewide average. And with that, I'm ready for any questions you have.
Back to the top of my report. Anybody want to start?
I'm happy to kick us off.
Go ahead.
Cheryl, huge thanks. For, obviously, there's just a massive amount of work here, so thank you.
It's a group effort. We're happy to do it for you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. My question is perhaps at a higher level, more strategic question. Curious to understand your just top level thoughts on how we use this data, how we use the insight that comes from this data, both in terms of, like everything from curriculum design through to intervention work, for example. I'm sure that there's like a myriad of ways, but I'd be grateful if you could help us to refresh our memory as to how this data is put into action within our district and across our schools.
It's a great question, Gina, and I am ready for that one. I'm sure that Denise might want to jump in after this morning's session and last month's session too with administrators, but we use, you already know, a wide variety of internal and external assessment data to support student learning in the classrooms. And I could go on and speak academically about it, but I'm going to give you just a couple examples because I think they're the ones that are the ones that you give you a little bit goosebumps. So as I was collecting this data, I talked to a lot of different people. Kevin Duong was one of them. And you know that he's our science teacher leader, and he has organized this data in a way that's going to help the teachers that he works with throughout the coming year so that they can focus their work in a way that's strategic and yields impactful results. And so he's identifying specific components of the science data where we can leverage our classroom instructional choices to gain results, because you can't work on everything all at once. And if you're working as a team, if you have a focus, you're more apt to have success because you can share strategies that way, share your data, share student progress along the way. So Kevin is using that data both at the high school and then also with the K-12 teachers that he's supporting this year. Another indicator of how we're using it at the site level comes from Alyssa Carey, who we all know and smile about when we say her name. Alyssa examined the mathematics data K-12 and then specifically zeroed in on 2 courses at the high school level, 2 grade levels, and then met with those teachers and had the teachers determine what the areas of focus needed to be. And I'm sorry I don't have the sheet where that is, but what they did, this is ingenious because this is where the real change happens in the classroom. Instead of saying, let's build these huge units around these pieces that the students aren't getting, what they're doing is very simply and very wisely using a series of warm-up questions every day in those classes. Everybody's using the same warm-up questions that focus on those skills that students are having difficulty with. One of them was proportions, I remember, ratios, and they're just going back and recycling all those mathematics skills that students need throughout their mathematics career, but they're using it at in a tiny piece of their classroom at the beginning of the day, so that kids are touching base with it and they're building their skills so that they can use that when they're hitting the deeper problems later. And I know at the elementary level, we have all of our data that we use for DIBELS, and the KEA data is being collected each time a new transfer student comes in. We have to make sure that that student also has been tested on the KEA skills. So we could go on with the ideas, but the idea is administrators know that they need to use their data, both external and internal, to promote change and student achievement. And that's what we're doing. And if Denise wanted to speak to her work that she's doing.
Well, we're working with the administrators on how to analyze the data using different tools, specifically pivot tables, so that it's easier and quicker than manually looking at line by line on a spreadsheet and comparing numbers. So we've done several sessions with our administrators on how to analyze data using pivot tables in Excel, and I think they are getting very excited about it. That might be me just more excited about it, but then they use that data. So, and it's not just, it's all sorts of data, but then they use that data to go back to then their teacher teams to say, here's some data sets. How are we going to use this to intervene with students or to change our practice in the classroom? So it starts with the administrators, goes down to the teachers, and then we have our collaborative inquiry teams that use that data as well. And they seek out different data sets from internal and external data that we have to use for their inquiry process as well. So it's throughout at all different levels to not just intervention, but acceleration as well, that which students are performing well, which students are not, what subgroups are not performing well. They're really disaggregating the data so that they can pinpoint and target the improvement for all students.
I want to pick up when you said pinpoint and target, because that came up again and again at the table I was sitting at this morning about when you come up with an inquiry question, I wonder what the data on X shows, or which students are performing at a low level, which students are exceeding performance, and then how their questions shifted as they found more data and uncovered more data. This happened with Justin. I mean, when we were talking about the data one afternoon, and we were looking at one particular subgroup at the high school in math, and this subgroup had an extremely low percentage passing rate. But when we looked at it, what we found was there were 11 students in the subgroup. 3 of them did really poorly, like way low. The others were okay. Some were approaching, some were proficient, there was even an exceeding, but because of the small number, the math was skewed to a point where we would look at it and you'd say, that subgroup, everybody in that subgroup needs help. But by drilling down, we knew that these 3 students are the ones that we need to track and we need to look at to see, all right, so how are these students doing in ELA? How are they doing in their math course? How are they doing? How close, do they have any graduation requirements they're trying to go back and backfill because they failed a course? These are the kids that, this is the kind of data digging that helps you really pinpoint where the problems lie so you can be strategic about the actions that you put in place.
Yeah, I appreciate those examples that you both shared.
So it is that granular. You can get to student by student.
Yes, when they were sharing this morning, there were some examples for the sharing by some principals of their actual pivot tables and the questions that they asked, the inquiry questions, and it gets it right down to the individual student. You know, it might be a
For example, one of the questions was, which students were minimally or partially proficient and had low growth? And with a click, it brings up the names of those students.
And then you put in the scale scores so that you can determine how close some of these students might be to the next level from, you know, partially proficient to proficient, or from minimally proficient to partially proficient. So it does, very granular.
A lot of this work is also going on over at, it's going on all over, but I'm thinking of Canyon View with its additional targeted support, the grant that we have to work with our special education students, the data tables that these teachers have created to support student growth over time, they're amazing. and they help to chart the next step in instruction so that there's no time wasted. That every moment in the classroom, every moment of tutoring is spent helping to support these kids toward proficiency.
What about can you say anything about the limited proficient English students, since that seems to be?
Well, being a language person, I have a lot to say about that, but if you've ever been in a country where you don't speak the language,
And they take a test in that
and then
language
they
if
ask
they're not
you to take a
proficient in?
test
Of course.
in that subject, there are a lot of things going on. We have several teachers in our district who were ELs when they came to this country, and they have very clear recollections of how they felt after this type of testing. So a lot of what has to happen with these kids is building them up and letting them know that this is just something we have to do, and then we're going to get back to, because really, you come in and you're a novice low, a novice mid, and they're asking you to take a 5th grade science test.
Right.
They're doing the best they can. And so our EL team and all of our teachers are working to help support that growth.
And of course, the academic language is the last to develop, right?
Right.
So
Right.
we're asking them to test on the things that are the most difficult for them to
Yeah, the
develop.
basic interpersonal communication skills, BICS, they have BICS and CALP, right? Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency in BICS. Most of our ELs can have a little bit of BICS, but CALP is tough, which is why our teachers work so strategically to scaffold that language and to provide a lot of input that helps make the content accessible to the ELs.
We've also done a lot of work with the teachers who are teaching the students and the programs that they're using with them. So that we have a specific reading program that we're using with them. We have some specific materials that we're using with them
Bless you.
that are geared for the EL learners. And so those are becoming promising for the achievement of the students as well. It's just taking some time to train everybody and get the students going with those. It takes more than your average
Yeah.
classroom situation or learning experience to do that. It takes many repetitions for them to learn something like that.
And is it the case that when they come out of that category at some point, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
while they're in that category, it's when they are having,
Right.
obviously, when they become proficient, then they're no longer in that category.
Exactly.
So it's not surprising or alarming, it sounds like.
It is. I mean, we always want to keep tabs on these kids, obviously. It's just that we understand that when you hand a test to a student, a 9th grade student who's just arrived from China, and you hand him a test in English, he has no English proficiency.
Right.
We need to understand what those results might be and then just keep working to help promote
But even the
proficiency.
state recognized that, so for Move On When Reading, it used to be that if a student had 2 years of English instruction, then they were eligible for retention if they didn't pass. Now they've changed that up to 3. So they've even recognized that it's
Helps, yeah.
taking a longer time for kids to acquire that language for an assessment and academic language.
And language proficiency and acquisition varies so much by individual. Even if you're in the same immersive environment with the same teacher, your pathway to proficiency can be fairly different. Depends on who you are as a learner, what supports you have at home. Proficiency is.
But we have become very strategic with that group.
Do we have any level of comfort that at the K through 8 level, the statewide assessment will start to stabilize and not be changed every year?
Based on the history of our assessment program in the state.
No.
No. Every 2 or 3 years.
It seems to change, and I think it's even been fewer years than that in recent years, has it not?
AASA has been around, what, 2 years?
2 years, and then we
years.
had Easy
ACT,
Merit,
ACT and ACT
Ames.
Aspire about the same.
And Easy Merit, we have.
Easy Merit, Ames. It's
Yeah, it just seems, we continually are not we, but the assessment tool continually changes. It makes me wonder what's wrong with the prior assessment tools, and, how good is this data? I understand that we take this data and we aggregate it down to the student level and we react to this data. But there seems to be such a disconnect, and this was the question that I emailed you, and I know you don't have an answer for it, but there's such a disconnect between what's happening with that statewide assessment and I think what's really happening with the scores at the high school level with the ACT Aspire and the ACTs and the CWRAs, that it makes me wonder how predictive, and I know that's not necessarily their purpose, the statewide assessment to be predictive of student success in the long run, but if we look at this data, does that mean that when they hit high school, we're going to start to see these other scores, assuming nothing changes and no interventions? So how predictive is this data at the statewide assessment level? It worries me only because I look at how low the passing rates are in the state in general. I mean, we're doing so much better than the state as a whole. It just makes me question the assessment to some degree. But
I think the predictive nature is a misnomer, right?
Yeah.
Because this is just, how are they performing on these standards that are tested at that grade level?
yeah,
So it's really, it's a snapshot.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
It's not really predictive of how they're going to do long-term. It's how did they do on that grade level material that was taught?
Yeah.
And then next year, how did they do on this grade level material? So it's the standards for that grade.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't think the predictive nature is really there for the AASA.
Other questions, folks? I'm scrolling through all my stickies here.
So ACT Aspire is being discontinued at the national level. ACT is supporting ACT Aspire Arizona through 2026. Am I reading that?
We'll continue to give the ACT Aspire and ACT.
Right.
It's just that it's no longer, I forget what page that was on with the ACT where it talked about.
Yeah, right at the top of ACT Aspire,
20.
131, page 17 is where it says it's being discontinued at a national level. But ACT
Oh, but it's
Aspire-
still supported, yeah, still supported
here
through.
in Arizona, I guess, through 26, is that? You know, again, when we find the matrix we're using, we're gonna go ahead and can it.
Right.
What does it mean that the ACT Aspire is not used for accountability?
That it's not, those scores that students receive on the ACT Aspire aren't included in our A through F lettered grades.
Just as a-
Although bonus points for
But the bonus
participation are
points,
given
yes,
in the A through F grading
So how
system.
students perform isn't included, but the
But
participation.
the fact that they
right?
participated, okay, gotcha. It is very strange.
Yeah,
Just people on the State Board of Education. I don't understand how they think.
So where else?
Not a
Yeah, I
question,
wonder if
but
we
just-
should test our students more.
Pardon me?
what's that?
I wonder if we should expand the standardized testing.
Oh, yikes. I know you're
States
joking,
require-
Mary.
High school is already testing all the time.
I know,
Yeah.
it's
I'm
like,
testing coordinator there.
Well, I do have to say that I appreciate that they're doing it with the ACT now, because at least it's something students would take anyway, which is, I think, was a great change, but
Not a question, but a comment. I really appreciated the examples that both of you shared about how the data is being used in real life, so to speak. I would welcome the opportunity for you to come back and, you know, throughout the, multiple times throughout the year to continue to share those sorts of examples with us.
It's important.
It really helps us to, I mean, I work with data all the time in my day job. And I always tell my team, you know, it's not about the data itself, it's about the story that it's trying to tell us.
Stories, yeah.
And so what is that story that this data is trying to tell us, right? That's where we'll see the true magic happen. And that's exactly what you're doing. So kudos to you for doing that. I personally would welcome the opportunity to continue to hear those examples of how you and your teams are using the data to enact real change for the benefit of our staff and our students.
our classroom-based assessments are strong, so what
Are
our
strong.
teachers are creating,
mm-hmm.
yet, you know, we're part of this larger system, we can't.
And ignore it. But
Yeah, but the most meaningful, as far as instructional improvement that then benefits students, happens at the classroom level.
Yes.
Formative assessment.
Yes.
On a daily basis.
Right?
To modify instruction. So that's the best practice.
What's the lag time between when the test is taken and when the data is received?
This is 2022 or 2020,
23.
stuff that was taken in the spring of 23,
They
right?
took it in the spring, and then in July, the preliminary data, June, July, the preliminary data comes out. Then we start to analyze it after the final data comes out.
We analyze it and then they change it.
Yeah, I
Analyze
learned
it,
that the
and so
hard
we
way.
analyze it
I
again.
think it's finalized and it's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
And there's not usually a lot of changes.
no, but
there's
you have
some.
to go back and redo the data spreadsheets again once they change any data.
Which is why we're trying to build up their skill with doing it quickly,
Yeah,
using some tools.
yeah.
I'd like to think we're gonna see up and right the next couple of years based on coming out of the pandemic. I just,
Yeah.
hopefully.
you would think we bought them somewhere around 22, hope. But it kind of supports that, but at other places it doesn't.
Yeah, you can see some
Exactly.
recovery.
Trying to draw some
Recovery is really hard to
conclusions, and
measure.
There's some in there, but there's not all.
We're seeing that at a national, back to sort of following through, I think that cohort at a national level. Yeah.
We're thrilled about the kindergarten.
I know.
Yeah,
We're
the
already
kinders.
curious through our
The
assessment
kinders.
program. Yeah, we're gonna expect great things from this
Yeah.
cohort.
Yeah.
Every last one of them.
Got it.
Well, and we've made great strides, with the DIBELS data as well, so that early reading
Yeah.
is making really great progress.
Reading scores are pretty low. Feel bad for the rest of the state. The rest of the state feel below the national average. It's brutal.
Yeah, and we can't say that we're thrilled with our scores.
Right.
So, yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
realistically here, we've got some room to move.
Higher.
And
Absolutely.
can we affect, that improvement? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it goes back to disaggregating the data and analyzing it and putting it into motion in the classroom, which you're doing.
And differentiating instruction, which is really challenging.
Yeah.
Well, and it connects to the teacher shortage nationally, the teacher shortage in Arizona, how
The
attracting
alternative
teachers,
certification.
alternative certifications, and our own induction program. And then hoping that teachers who we're training will stay with us.
Yeah.
And knowing the kids in front of you.
Yes. Right.
Particularly.
So, we're working on analyzing the data, but also analyzing our teacher data too, so that we can improve teacher quality along with improving student achievements. That's no easy feat.
No.
Well, if it were easy, everybody would be doing
Many of
it.
you really scored
Thank you.
high.
No, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you find any other errors, let me know, otherwise I'll send it.
Okay, well,
Well, wait,
Sorry,
have you, you could join us.
I could.
I just always assume I'm reading the data wrong, which is why I send off the questions,
Must be me,
and I
right?
never just
Must-
say, I really think you made a mistake here.
Right.
I'm thinking, what am I looking at that I'm not looking at correctly?
You start with yourself, that's.
I never assume I'm right. Okay, well, thank you again.
Thank
That's
you.
a boatload of work to put that together and then to stand here and present it, and we appreciate it.
We do.
All right, item 6.2, the Arizona Legislative / Governmental Activity. Anybody got anything to say?
Up and running.
Governor's State of the State, speech yesterday, so there are some education components, of course.
Yes. I was more concerned about the budget deficit and the effect that that's going to have on coming up with a budget and us getting numbers so that we can come up with a budget and what that's going to do to education funding this year.
I thought it was really interesting that some of our legislators said, oh, this is an issue with revenue.
Yeah.
I thought, well, one could make that argument when you're overspending the resources you have, the fix is to bring in more money. But we We've had just, years of tax cuts.
Right.
Yeah, so here we are. It's not unfamiliar to us when we're coming into this time of the year to wonder how this is going to affect, because education, K-12 is a chunk, 7.8 billion of the budget. How, what our challenges will be here.
Yep. It'll be another interesting budgetary process for all of us. All right. Anything on future agenda considerations? Got it
Me.
tomorrow?
Me.
Maybe Bola.
Was going to be, and then now she's not able to make it. Did you want to take it back? Because it was originally yours. Tomorrow at 10.
I've done one in a while, but I can't do 10, so.
Amy Kraus can do it, so if you can't, I don't want you to have to rearrange your schedule, but if you want your original date back.
You are
it's
welcome to it.
yours.
I could, if I'd known this morning, I could have, but
Yeah, I just
didn't.
found out this
I
evening.
can't rearrange my
Okay,
schedule.
I apologize. Okay, so then it'll be Amy and I, and we'll do it in person at 10 o'clock at MIC. All right. All right, anyone, if you have no other items under future agenda considerations, I would entertain a motion for adjournment of the meeting.
Sure.
Second. Sorry.
All those in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everyone. Great presentations,
you.
everybody. Everybody, thanks for your participation.
Thank you, Lynn and Paula.